Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual celebration of Darwin Day 2025. I'm Amanda Townley, Executive Director of NCSE, and I am thrilled to have you all here for what promises to be an engaging and enlightening event. Whether you're a scientist, educator, student, or just someone interested in learning more about the origins of life and the world around us, we are so glad that you're here today to join us in celebrating one of the most profound intellectual journeys in the history of science. Today marks a special occasion. It's the 216th birthday of Charles Darwin, the British naturalist whose groundbreaking work on the theory of evolution transformed our understanding of life on Earth. Darwin's ideas, encapsulated in his book On the Origin of Species, really forever changed the way we think about biological diversity, adaptation, and the interconnectedness of all living things. His theory of natural selection, in which species evolve over time through processes of variation and survival, laid the foundation for modern biology, genetics, and even medicine. In many ways, Darwin's ideas challenged centuries of conventional thought, but they also gave us the tools to understand our place in the natural world. Today, the theory of evolution is the cornerstone of biology, helping us to understand everything from the development of antibiotic resistance to the intricacies of ecosystems and even climate change. And yet, as we'll discuss later today, the journey of understanding and acceptance of Darwin's ideas truly is ongoing. So why do we still celebrate Darwin Day more than 150 years after the publication of On Origin of Species? It's not just about remembering Darwin's contributions, but about reaffirming the values that his work represents: curiosity, scientific inquiry, and the pursuit of knowledge. We also celebrate Darwin Day because, despite overwhelming scientific consensus supporting evolution, his ideas remain the subject of controversy in some parts of the world and even in the United States. This challenge continues to impact the way we teach science, particularly in our K-12 schools. So by coming together on Darwin Day, we honor Darwin's legacy and stand in solidarity with those who are still working to protect the integrity of science education, organizations like NCSE and the National Association of Biology Teachers. Together, we stand with educators, researchers, students, and advocates who are fighting to ensure that the science of evolution remains a central part of our educational system. This year, 2025, holds even greater significance in the ongoing conversation about evolution in science education. It marks the 100th anniversary of the Scopes trial, also known as the monkey trial, which took place in 1925. This trial centered around John Scopes, a high school teacher in Tennessee who was charged with violating a state law forbidding the teaching of evolution in public schools. Although the trial did not lead to a decisive victory for evolution, it thrust the conflict between science and religious dogma into the public spotlight, a place where it has remained ever since. This year is also the 20th anniversary of the Kitzmiller versus Dover Area School District trial that happened in 2005. It was in that case that the court ruled the teaching of intelligent design was unconstitutional in public school science classrooms. This landmark decision affirmed the importance of keeping the separation of science and religion and keeping them in their respective realms, reinforcing that need for rigorous, evidence-based science education for all students. Unfortunately, the challenges to evolution education are far from over. Even in the 21st century, there are ongoing efforts to weaken the teaching of evolution in schools or introduce non-scientific alternatives. This year, debates about the teaching of evolution are already resurfacing in state legislatures across the United States. From attacks on higher education in Ohio to intelligent design bills in North Dakota, these efforts continue to undermine students' understandings of fundamental biological concepts. So as we mark these anniversaries, we are reminded of the importance of staying vigilant, of supporting our educators, and of advocating for sound science education. It is truly critical that we continue to teach our students the science of evolution as the foundation of modern biology. because our future, quite literally, depends on it. I am so fortunate to be a part of multiple organizations that work tirelessly to support and protect science education and the legacy of Darwin's work. Let me briefly introduce you to some of them. First, the National Association of Biology Teachers, this amazing family of educators from around the country that is hosting this event tonight. If you're not aware already, NABT is an amazing professional organization that's dedicated to improving biology teaching and supporting teachers from K-12 into higher education. NABT provides a wealth of professional development opportunities, a wealth of resources, and so much support to ensure that biology educators have the tools and connections they need to effectively teach principles such as evolution as well as other biological concepts. I had the honor of serving such an amazing group of teachers and now serve as the immediate past president of this wonderful organization. The other organization I have the benefit of being a part of is the National Center for Science Education. Our organization has been at the forefront of defending and supporting the teaching of evolution, climate change, and other concepts that are seen in the public as controversial but are not scientifically controversial for more than 40 years. We provide invaluable resources for teachers, scientists, and other advocates to help them counter the forces that seek to undermine the teaching of evolution. We operate in 3 areas: catalyzing action, to monitor the airwaves when there are attempts to impact negatively the teaching of science in K-12 education, so that we can motivate and mobilize people on the ground in order to respond. Our investigating science education wing that keeps a finger on the pulse of science education around the United States. And last but certainly not least, our science education and outreach team that works tirelessly to provide support through professional learning, through free resources, free professional learning, and other toolkits for our teachers to help them teach bravely, to help them counter misinformation, to help them combat misconceptions and help correct those as we move forward in our classrooms. Without these 2 wonderful organizations, I don't know where I would have been as a teacher. And so as a former classroom teacher and someone who's been able to engage in these incredible spaces, I hope that you find your way to the NABT website and the NCS websites and sign up to become a member, sign up to engage and advocate for science education across the country. And most certainly, I cannot forget March Mammal Madness. So while they may not be directly involved with the legal and educational battles, March Mammal Madness is such an engaging and fun way to celebrate Darwin's legacy while also getting our students excited about the diversity of life on Earth. Not only is it fun for students, it's fun for everyone. So if you've never played, I encourage you to engage. Just think of it as a tournament-style game where mammals compete in simulated battles based on their real-life characteristics and abilities. So it's a really lighthearted way to bring our students into the science of evolution, into biology, ecology, and so many more things while having a great time. As we look ahead, it's clear that the work of Charles Darwin is as relevant today as it was when he first set sail on the HMS Beagle. We face a rapidly changing world where understanding evolution is key to addressing things like climate change, disease outbreaks, and the loss of biodiversity. But our work, like Darwin's, is not finished, and our role as advocates for science education is more important than ever. I encourage all of you today to think about how you can contribute to this ongoing legacy, whether it's supporting and engaging with organizations like NCSE or NABT, engaging with your local communities to support science literacy, or simply continuing to learn and share knowledge about the natural world. We all play a part in shaping the future of science education. So I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate generations of learning about evolution. It all started with Darwin. Thank you for reflecting on the history of science education, and most importantly, looking ahead to the challenges and opportunities that lie before us. Together, we can ensure that that legacy continues to inspire, curiosity, discovery, and the pursuit of knowledge for generations to come. It is my incredible pleasure tonight for our 2025 Darwin Day event, co-hosted by the NCSE and sponsored by the National Association of Biology Teachers, the absolutely infamously magically wonderful Dr. Katie Hind. Katie is a prominent evolutionary biologist. She is a leading expert in mammalian behavior and lactation science. Katie is a homegrown girl starting her academic journey at Seattle Central Community College. Shout out to strong starts in amazing places, before transferring to the University of Washington as an undergrad and later earning her PhD from UCLA, where she studied animal behavior, focusing on the environmental factors that influence reproductive strategies in mammals. As a faculty member now at Arizona State University, Katie conducts research that explores the complexities of mother-infant interactions, milk composition, and the evolutionary drivers of mammalian reproductive strategies. Her groundbreaking work has reshaped our entire understanding of how lactation adapts to ecological conditions as well as the health needs of offspring. Her incredible contributions have been recognized, with her being named a fellow in 2022 of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Beyond her research, Katie is well known for her very unique and creative contributions to science outreach, particularly March Mammal Madness. This annual online bracket competition, which she founded, and she will tell you, is supported by an incredible team of individuals that make all of the magic possible, pits real-life species against each other in head-to-head battles, combining humor, education, and most importantly, science. Because if you're learning, you are also having fun. And if you are having fun, you are learning. We are super excited. Through all of this innovative work, Katie has not only advanced scientific knowledge, but also created such a fun and accessible platform. She is such a passionate advocate for diversity in science, and her efforts and outreach continue to inspire really all of us. So we really hope you enjoy our celebration. Let's keep pushing for a future where science and education are celebrated, protected, and accessible to all. Happy Darwin Day, and without further ado, Dr. Katie Hind.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that incredible introduction. I'm going to pull up my talk right now and get all right. Can everybody see my slides? And all right. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, I can't even express how big of an honor it is for me to be here today talking to you on Darwin Day, a treasured holiday, and having been invited by the NCSE. I have been a huge fan of the NCSE for decades, likely because I spent my adolescence and early adulthood in the Seattle area, and was grievously heartbroken as the Discovery Institute really dismantled a lot of evolutionary education. And NCSE was the leading edge of addressing misinformation about evolutionary theory. And I've held a special place in my heart for that organization ever since. So Amanda, when she contacted me to let me, we're just going to close that. When Amanda contacted me to invite me to give this talk, I was just over the moon excited. So thank you so much for having me. I'm going to try very, very hard to stick to my 30 minutes of presentation time. And without further ado, I want to talk to you about how stories enhance science education. A lioness walks into an orca. And of course, we're here because it is Darwin Day, because Darwin, along with Alfred Russel Wallace, really leveled up our understanding of how mutations and variants, when favored by natural selection, can produce the myriad species that we find in our world today. And I love, this is the earliest known image of Charles Darwin, and I just think it's spectacular that this kid that was obviously interested in nature from a very early age would become the person who wrote, "There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on, according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved." And that quote still gets me today just as much as it did the first time I read it, from the initial edition of On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. But there are other words of Darwin's that I think really resonate with me today. Um, and these come from a letter that Charles Darwin wrote in 1861 to Charles Lyell, the really important geologist that really reoriented people to the age of the Earth and how old it was. And just to remind you, 1861 was 2 years after Darwin had published his, hugely germinal work in evolutionary biology. And he wrote, "But I am very poorly today and very stupid, and I hate everybody and everything. One lives only to make blunders." And it just reminds me that each of us is always too hard on ourselves. And if someone as influential across centuries can have those days where things are really tough, I think it reminds all of us to be kinder and more gentler to ourselves. And especially as we know every time we open the news, there's a new assault on education and science and community. It really behooves us to find ways to respond sustainably. And so this is where I kind of think about, adaptation to change and pressure versus resilience to challenge. And our capacities for resilience to challenge are themselves shaped by natural selection on our ancestors so that we have behavioral flexibility and we are able to respond. So we can think about these things as we can escape into a good book, or we can find peace in nature space, which we know is very good for our health. We can have a spa day, or we can pursue the company of pets. Obviously, I'm going to favor dogs. And those are all really, really great things. But what we know about humans is that we do best when embedded in our communities. And so finding ways to celebrate with community, to work together with community, and to harness the power of communities to address the challenges is really a core aspect of humanity. And I would argue that Marshmallow Madness has allowed us to build communities that are really just incredible in how many different types of people become a part of this community. And that, fundamentally, there is an age-old question for humans, and that is who would win. And I say it's an age-old question because we know from the archaeological and paleoarchaeological record that people have been talking about who would win for thousands and tens of thousands of years. So whether we're talking about tiger and elk battles in tattoos of people pulled out of the permafrost in Siberia, or Cardi B talking on Twitter about who winning in a fight, a lion or a silverback gorilla, we know that these kinds of questions have always riveted humans. And in fact, for myself, one of my earliest memories is specifically about a who would win question. So I was a small child in rural Ohio, Gahanna, Ohio, actually, and this is me with my books and my animals and my dad, and I'm there holding a little stuffed lion. And one afternoon, I came walking through. My dad had sat down to watch TV, which he didn't usually watch TV. And I said, "Dad, what are you watching?" And he said, "I'm going to watch the Bears versus the Bengals." And I knew what a bear was. And I was like, "Well, what's a Bengal?" My dad was like, "It's a tiger." And I was like, Bears versus tigers? Absolutely. I am 100% in for this. And I sat down and I was very, very excited. And after what seemed like a very long time, but was probably just 2 minutes to the coin toss, I remember asking my dad, like, when what's going on? And he's like, "Oh, they're doing the coin toss." And I was like, "Well, when are the bears and the tigers going to get out here? And my dad's like, they're out there right now. And I was like, those are men. And that's the day I learned what a mascot was. And I was greatly, greatly disappointed. But from that initial seed has come what became March Mammal Madness starting in 2013. And so for those of you that may be unfamiliar, it's like college basketball March Madness, but make it animals. And also we very ethically engage in thought experiments based on evidence and don't actually fight animals. And along those lines, think of it as like D&D, but make it science. So we have scenarios that we put forward, people make predictions about what they think is going to happen, and then they compare what they think is going to happen based on a probabilistically determined outcome. And instead of a small group of friends playing in a basement, we have tens of thousands of players that engage in March Mammal Madness every year. And we thank you every educator who has participated in our survey. We use those data to improve and refine the tournament, and it's from those answers that we get this information about how many educators are requesting the materials and how many learners do they plan on sharing the tournament with. And we also were able to find out, so each of these red dots is an educator in a county in the United States. So each county is only represented once, even though some of the more populated counties have multiple educators. But ultimately, what we've discovered is that in 2024, there were educators using March Mammal Madness with their players somewhere in 50% of the counties in the United States. So with that in mind, I want to also highlight why has March Mammal Madness been so successful? How is it that it was shared with 840,000 learners that we know about last year? And I think that the success of March Mammal Madness has happened because of the way in which we build community. We are adaptive in response to new technologies, new opportunities, and then due to feedback from our community of users, every year there is dissent with modification of the tournament resources and our ideas and how we approach it. So we really take that kind of feedback and collaboration in mind to continue to improve the tournament year over year. Also, we have to acknowledge that stoats may be a major part of the success of March Mammal Madness. We know that art and games and excitement improve learning. So there's a lot of really great pedagogical research showing that when art is an element within science education, when games bring students together, and there's a playful aspect to it, that really improves learning. And we also know that emotional engagement improves learning. And here I've written excitement, not necessarily happiness or joy, but just anything that gets emotions elevated. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask the co-host to open the chat. And some people were already dropping these things in earlier during Amanda's introduction. But if you could drop into the chat an MMM battle or event that greatly upset or surprised or overjoyed you. So something that just really, really engaged you from one of the previous tournaments. And I'm going to pop open that chat. Because we have a lot of, okay, so, all right, be an elephant, harpy eagle. People are still, okay, there's a lot coming in. I can't wait to look at the chat afterwards and catch up on all these. Orca versus lionesses, the screaming hairy armadillo. I'm gonna let this play for a couple moments. While that's happening, I will mention that one of my all-time favorite moments was when we revealed that platypus is only venomous during the mating season, which happens in the austral fall, or austral spring, which is fall to us, so in September. So in March, their venom isn't actually being produced because it's not necessary. They're not fighting with males for mating opportunities. So that's one where I know that a lot of people had platypus as their dark horse because it was venomous, and they're like, venomous mammal. Very few mammals are venomous. It's going to be, it's a dark horse. It's a sleeper winner. And the Wikipedia entry and the AI chat GPT are not going to warn you that they're only producing their venom in September in large amounts. All right. So people have just shared all of that information about things that they remember as being very exciting in different emotional ways. So now I'm going to ask you to answer a second question, which was, at the time that that happened, did you talk to anyone about that battle, your feelings, and what happened in the battle? That is, I think one of the things that is really great about Marshmallow Madness is the fact that teachers don't have the answers. You're finding out right along with your students. And this generates both a very democratizing, equalizing dynamic in the classroom, but also gives teachers a lot of opportunities to be their authentic selves in camaraderie with the students. And I think that is a really meaningful experience. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the talk now. So what we saw is that people had specific battles that they really remembered that got them very excited, and that people talked about it with other people they know in their networks. And this is the heart of ways that we're human and how we learn. So humans are social. We've always been social. There will be, of course, individual variants in how extroverted versus introverted we are in terms of our temperament, but fundamentally humans are social. And the social science about learning and our adaptation for learning, our adaptations for learning are really powerful. So that evolutionary social science informs our understanding of the sustained success of March Mammal Madness. So we learn from those we perceive as successful, those we think are knowledgeable, those with whom we share identities, which is why it's so important for diverse students to have diverse people to learn from. We also learn from who we have access to. So I would love to get investment advice from Warren Buffett, but I'm going to rely on investment advice from my Aunt Susan. So these are the ways in which we look to others to learn from. We know that children are adapted to socially learn about nature. So there's some really impressive research showing that children are more likely to remember animals that they've never heard of if they're told that they're dangerous or toxic than if they're a benign animal. So we know that kids are adapted to socially learn about really key information about the animals that they could encounter that might be a danger to them. We know that kids are adapted, they have adaptive cognition to learn about edible versus toxic plants, and that they really attend to how adults are using plants and whether or not they're eating plants and what plants are safe to put into their mouths. So even plants, kids are adapted to learn about plants. And we know that art has been really important for socially learning about nature. So here's a photograph that I took at the base of Uluru in the central desert of what is now called Australia. And these are layers and layers and layers of drawings in ochre on the rock in what was the boys' classroom, where they learned from their grandfathers about plants and goanna lizards and emu and all sorts of things about their natural world. And what we find when we look systematically at illustrations of animals for tens of thousands of years is that there's information about the physical and behavioral traits of the animals, the predator-prey dynamics of animals, aspects of their life history stages. I love the elephant calf trailing along behind an older female relative. Things about the animal group composition and their seasonality. And when we compare information that are in these archival records in the illustrated rock art of ancestors, is that correlates with the faunal availability and the skeletal remains and fossils of these species. So it is the original natural history report. And importantly, right here, humans have anatomical, neurobiological, cognitive, and cultural capacities for language, cooperation, and control of fire. And this afforded human social groups extended hours of socializing and opened up a virtual world of the imagination, ritual, and stories. So humans are storytellers and story listeners, and we know that from our anatomy, our sensory perception, and the ways in which we engage in language. Further, other researchers have shown that humans are story learners. So stories exist as bridges across generations. So Felix Boateng talks about how most of these fables, which also served as sources of entertainment, were told during moonlit nights, and children would go to bed with most of the lessons vividly on their minds. All attempts were made to make storytelling interesting and entertaining. Stories, proverbs, and anecdotes are cultural tools used in indigenous communities to teach children about their environment. Animals feature prominently in many oral traditions, stories, fables, and folklore. And these traditional stories often include fitness-relevant information about how to avoid predators, how to be successful at hunting, how to safely navigate through the environment, and also social behaviors for cooperation. So in traditional learning settings, humanities, social sciences, and life sciences are all interwoven into how to navigate our world writ large. This is a beautiful study where a team of researchers basically coded all of the fairy tales until they could figure out what were some of the foundational fairy tales of the Proto-Indo-European languages. And when they did this analysis, they found that there were 4 fairy tales that were common in the original language 5,000 years ago. And all of those 4 stories are about animals or monsters. And one of them is The Smith and the Devil, which we still tell today. And it's fundamentally about a human making a deal with a supernatural being for some kind of otherworldly power. Today, we are most familiar with it in terms of ability to play music, going to the crossroads and making a deal with the devil to be really, really good at performing blues music. But originally, it was a story about an otherworldly power to make metals. And it seems that this fairy tale culturally diffused across the landscape along with the emergence and diffusion of metallurgy in the Copper Age and the Bronze Age. Sorry, I love this study. I love this study. I geek out on this study all the time. And so humans are story learners. We really nice research has shown that through narrative, learners are transported across time and space. They draw inferences. I already mentioned we experience emotions from stories. And what we find in terms of learning is that information in narrative form is easier to comprehend. It's read faster. It's remembered better, and inconsistencies are more detected. Oh man, do I get nervous about continuity in March Mammal Madness stories because people remember. They remember if the injury was on the left leg or the right leg. And so the story is a really important way of tapping into how people are constructing knowledge in their minds. Narrative-centered learning promotes learner self-efficacy. It increases interest and presence in the learning experience, and it gives them a perception of control because of that audience storyteller dynamic. They're active participants in stories as they unfold. So we can ask somebody, or kid, who would win, a grizzly bear or a pack of wolves? And if you were to ask them that question, most people and kids would start telling you a story of how that encounter would happen and like what they think would happen and who would win. And that's fantastic because by enabling learners to be co-constructors of narratives, narrative-centered learning environments can promote the deep connection-building, meaning-making activities that define constructivist learning. By presenting a situation in which children and adults are telling stories, it's reinforcing how they're thinking, and they can tell stories back and forth to each other such that they scaffold knowledge. So we can answer the question of what would happen with a grizzly bear's encounter with a pack of wolves because they've been studied for decades in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And what we find is that fewer than 5% of those encounters involve wolves successfully defending a kill against a bear. Bears are very successful at taking kills from wolves, even in the pack. And we also know that there is less likely to be carnage. So over 90% of grizzly wolf encounters end with no fatalities. So everybody that writes me lots of letters demanding more carnage, we are giving you as much carnage as is scientifically responsible. Okay. So, here we have all that science, but if we just give kids like this list on its own, they're not necessarily going to remember as much stuff as if we tell it in a story. And so this is a key thing about like what is a story? Well, stories have a basic story arc, right? You have an exposition, you have an initial incident, you have an escalating conflict or escalating tensions. This comes to a peak moment, and then there is the falling action, the resolution, and then the denouement, the tying up of loose ends. And we follow this story arc exactly in March Mammal Madness. If you follow either the evening magazine or all of the social media information, if you want to get the full story, you have to look at those resources. So we meet the combatants, we set the scene of the encounter in the early rounds. The better ranked species gets home habitat advantage, and the other combatant, if it's not from that habitat, becomes a visitor. The visitor arrives, somehow the battle escalates, there is some peak moment, and then there is the falling action as that encounter resolves. And then the name of this talk is based on what was one of the most challenging battles we've ever had to write in March Mammal Madness. And this was the championship battle of 2022, when Orca came out of the Queens of the Sea and Sky division, won in the final roar to make it to the championship. Lionesses were working as a team because they were part of a team-based division. Usually it's just one individual. But lionesses emerged from the mammal collectives, and they were going to encounter each other in the final championship. So it's Orca versus Pride of Lionesses. By the time we got to the championship battle, there were 3 lionesses left, as one of them had accrued injuries on the way and was not fit for battle. And we had included orcas in the tournament, specifically resident orcas of the Salish Sea that specialize in salmon hunting. And I had selected them to be in the tournament because I really wanted to draw attention to the incredible vulnerability of this population of orcas. They have huge amounts of sound pollution. There's been, incredible collapse of the salmon that they rely on. And at the time, there was a huge movement to bring a captive orca home from, she had been captured as a calf in a cove off Bainbridge Island, near where I grew up on Vashon Island. And she was the orca that had spent the longest lifespan in captivity in the United States. And in 2022, there was a real escalation of the effort by the Luma tribe to bring her home. As they were preparing to transfer her and prepping the pen that she would retire to in the Salish Sea, she sadly passed away from liver failure. But this was a major topic, and we really wanted to highlight this at the time. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the process of March Mammal Madness, what we do is we estimate the probability of an outcome between 2 combatants or the combatants that are going to encounter each other. And we base that on their relative sizes, their fighting style, their weapons, their defenses, their motivations, their temperaments, really just a lot of really good natural history about them. We estimate that probability, and then we rely on a random number generator to determine the official outcome of the tournament. So we joke that it's the One Ring, the random number generator. For this battle, in the advanced rounds, in the elite trait, the final roar, and the championship, the battle is location is randomized between 4 pre-announced possible habitats. So in 2022, we asked the One Ring, what of the 4 possible battle locations, where was this battle going to take place? We were told the location was going to be the kelp forest. Naturally, we gave a huge advantage to the orca. I think it was 90% or 95% probability that the orca would win. And the One Ring went with the improbable, highly improbable outcome of lionesses, which when that happened, I believe this is exactly the facial expression I was making, because I knew that this was going to be a really tough sell. So for February and March of 2022, knowing that this championship battle was coming and needed to be written, I was really stressed because the challenge was it had to be an epic culminating battle. It had to be an epic championship. It had to be anchored to science. It was an improbable encounter. So how do you get the lionesses and the orca to encounter each other at a kelp forest for a battle to take place? And also, having done that successfully, how do you account for that improbable outcome? And I know people have strong thoughts about this battle. I finally, after reading lots and lots of literature, created a story arc for the battle. So we had made it clear that the combatant was a grandma orca. She had an ill calf in her pod, and she was a resident orca of the Salish Sea against the lionesses. We announced that the battle was taking place in the kelp forest, specifically placing it in kelp forest outside of Protection Island in the Salish Sea. And the social media response to discovering the location of the battle was highly predictable based on who had picked which winner for the championship. So Team Lionesses were quite upset at the kelp forest. Team Orca was, one might use the phrase, obnoxiously smug. So the battle had to happen. So we had lionesses on the skeleton coast of Namibia searching the surf for food, which is documented. We know they do that. When magic translocates them to Protection Island in Washington, so they're walking along the beach. It turns into a different beach. Just offshore, a fin rises above the waves. When they start hearing roaring, suspense. And this was harbor seals that had hauled out along the shoreline, which lionesses of the Namibian skeleton coast, they will hunt marine pinnipeds. So we're going to tug some heartstrings with a really adorable little harbor seal. And lioness pounces toward the seal just as a transient orca surges toward that same seal. So this is the scenario in which they are going to encounter each other. And what's very exciting is that recent research has demonstrated that transient orcas in the Salish Sea are engaging in this beaching behavior to capture prey. And here we're going after him. Mammal. Of course, this is where the story becomes very dramatic. And the orca misses the seal and is grabbing the lioness because the lioness was pouncing at the same time. So they come together. Orca drags lioness into the kelp forest. Orca begins playing with its prey, as they do, well documented. And his sister and mom join him to play with their dinner. And at this point, Team Orca is cheering really loudly, and the lioness team is getting a little salty because they were like, "Where's Grandma Orca? This is an inappropriate substitution because transient orcas hunt mammals and they come up on shore to get mammals, but resident orcas eat salmon." So there was Team Orca didn't seem terribly concerned by this, and they should have been. Because Grandma Orca, resident of the Salish Sea, rams into the transient orca and blows his shit up. Okay, like she just full on battering rams him, bites into his side. He, of course, releases the lioness in the kelp forest, and he immediately, with his sister and his mother, start fleeing away from the resident orcas. Grandma Orca chases the transient orcas over 2 kilometers away from the field of battle, and this behavior has been documented in this location. Of course, Lioness is tangled in the kelp forest underwater on the field of battle. Is she drowned? Some last suspense? And of course not. She swims safely to shore and rejoins her sisters, such that at the end of the battle at Protection Island, protective Grandma Orca defending her calf from the presence of dangerous mammal-eating transient orcas saved the last lioness, even if incidentally, before departing the field of battle in pursuit of possible threats to her pod. So that was the culminating battle of 2022 and followed a very dramatic story arc. And everything, other than the fact that it was orcas and lionesses, was anchored to witnessed documented encounters of these animals with their prey species and with other predators in their habitats. This is what March Mammal Madness does. We weave natural history and empirical science into story. We've done this with hundreds of different species, thousands of different scholarly citations. We've cited hundreds of journals, and we've featured ecosystems in hundreds of different locations around the world. And we routinely evoke life sciences concepts and themes. So physical and behavioral traits, conservation and human impacts, ecosystem dynamics, interactions and impacts, species diversity, and the tree of life and variation among individuals. And those should all look very familiar to educators that are attending this webinar, because these, of course, are core themes and topics within next generation science standards. We build the story arcs across the tournament. Events in one round can carry into subsequent rounds, so animals can get injured. We talk about digestion and gut physiology. We have incubating diseases and zoonotic disease transmission. We anchor things to spring in the northern hemisphere and austral autumn in the southern hemisphere. And we really highlight how seasonality matters and how animals do certain things at certain times of the year. We also talk a lot about sensory perception and how animals engage in their world. And and you know, I get a lot of joy. I get a lot of cheering. We all get this really great messaging, but we also get a lot of gripes, where people have quibbles or complaints or frustrations. And although sometimes they kind of make me a little bit sad at first, what I realize is that it means people are really engaged. Like, they're really thinking about it. They're really caring about what they think is going to happen, what they've learned, and people remember when there is scientific information that upsets their predictions. And so in that sense, the fact that there are 65 combatants and 64 of them are not going to be champion means that there's a lot of opportunities for some really emotionally engaging learning to happen. So we really use the tournament to not just show the individual combatants, but also, we're not doing world building. The world already exists as it has evolved over billions of years, depending on what species we're talking about. So it's really about world showing of these ecosystems. And I talked about the earlier quote from Darwin about, this view of life. And the beginning of that passage is, "It is interesting to contemplate an entangled bank, clothed with many plants of many kinds, with birds singing on the bushes, with various insects flitting about, and with worms crawling through the damp earth, and to reflect that these elaborately constructed forms, so different from each other and dependent on each other in so complex a manner, have all been produced by laws acting around us." And specifically, he's arguing for not just the laws of the earth sciences, but the laws of evolution by natural selection. And this is, I think, why March Mammal Madness has the incredibly huge volunteer team that make this possible year after year, because we are all in love with our natural world. We want to protect it, and we want to share and grow that affection and joy among as many people as possible year after year. We find this is a post-tournament survey from last year from educators, and what we find is the vast majority are embedding the tournament in their curricula, that it builds curiosity for the natural world in their learners. They find that it increases the knowledge base of their learners, improves their skills for research and arguing from evidence, and almost all educators report that they themselves learn something new by participating in March Mammal Madness. So we use these evolved mechanisms for what and how we learn. So we learn socially, we learn about animals, nature, and through art. We learn through narrative and illustration. We learn from trusted experts. We love a collective experience, and there's a very festival vibe in all these spaces of people playing Marshmallow Madness, whether we're talking about a classroom or an office or a family or a group of friends. And there's a lot of excitement. And our three pillars are that the tournament should be fun, it should be accurate, not always precise and not always comprehensive and not always probable. It's accurate and that it's inclusive. So for everybody that's hung in the webinar until now, I have a few slides that are some advanced sneak peeks and some early information about March Mammal Madness in 2025. This year, in honor of the 10th tournament of the Genetics, Genomics, and Phylogeny team led by Professor Ann Stone, March Mammal Madness celebrates the Tree of Life in 2025. So it was a very perfect year to be paired with the National Center for Science Education, especially when we combine it with the anniversary of the Scopes monkey trial and the teaching of evolution in classes in schools. The divisions this year are same, different. So these are animals from very different lineages that can have similar traits because they have similar adaptations for types of lifestyles, such as traits for digging or gliding from tree to tree. This division celebrates convergent evolution. There's a division of the only ones. So these are mammals that are the only living species of their genus. So a scrawny small branch on the tree of life. Roots and relics is a division of species that have existed for so long from such ancient times or in a lost remnant population or both. And we also have tuxedo style, a division of mammals that are monochromatic, one color, species that are shades of gray all the way from black to white, but who will end up red all over. And I really want to draw your attention that Blake's going to talk about an NCSE lesson plan on convergent evolution, which may be harmonized with some of the combatants you'll see when the bracket drops on the 20th. We have started using nature to build our palette for the logo every year. So this is a color scheme this year, and we've taken it from the Grand Prismatic geothermal feature at Yellowstone National Park. And so anybody that has wondered, last year we had a coastal glacier in water, a tidewater glacier, and this year we have a geothermal feature. I do want to mention, I think people have started to find out that MC Marmot is on medical leave. We wish MC Marmot a very speedy recovery. And I promise you, you will have classroom videos of recaps. This year, they're going to be animated, and it's going to be called The Rundown. So it's going to be like a sports commentary show. A bit different, and fighting the ongoing rodent bias of MC Marmot that we have been inflicted with for too long. Just joke. I have to say, I would have taken 10 minutes if I listed everybody that contributes to making March Mammal Madness happen year after year. Teamwork makes the dream work, and there is an incredible community of scientists, librarians, conservationists, artists, so many people that come together to make March Mammal Madness possible. Educators, translators, curricular designers. It's just the most amazing community that you could ever hope to get to work with. And I thank everyone for their contributions to the tournament. So we're headed in to find out who's going to be the 13th champion of March Mammal Madness. And when it comes to bracket picks, I'm going to paraphrase Darwin from On the Origin of Species. As for future life, Every player must judge for themselves between conflicting vague probabilities. The bracket drops February 20th. And thank you to the entire community, educators and learners. Huge thank you to NABT and NCSE for making this possible. Everyone working toward improved planetary health. And I think we know quite clearly our efforts are now more essential than ever. Thank you for your attention. Get ready to roar. And I believe we have time. We have a few minutes. I went a little bit over. I'm sorry, Amanda. I think we have a few minutes for questions.
We do. So if people have questions, if you'll please put them in the chat. And we do have one big question to start out that came up several times. Is the entire thing written before the battles even start?
That is a great question. And the answer is no. All the outcomes are determined before the bracket drops. It's been my perennial goal to get the narrators to draft battles 48 hours before go time. And they're increasingly meeting me with that. We have almost all of the round 1 battles written, some of round 2 right now. There's been times where I am writing the battle as it is being like live announced. I will also mention it's being live announced on Blue Sky this year. We are no longer on Twitter X for obvious reasons. But there will be a video, there'll be an evening magazine, there will be the play-by-play. There are lots of ways to get the results. You don't have to be on social media. It's just kind of fun because it feels like a collective spectator event. But it will be over on Blue Sky, and there's a Let's Go MMM account over on Blue Sky.
Katie, somebody wants to know, how do you choose the contestants?
Great question. It's very hard. So what we do is oftentimes it's been nice that the terms have been going so long that now we can do this like 10th year of such and such, 10th year of such and such. And that helps us get a little bit more focused. But really, we want to have a combination of familiar favorites, species that a lot of people know, some like common animals that people are likely to encounter in their lives, and then some like really weirdo animals that nobody's ever heard of. I always love it when there's animals nobody's heard of. We also want there to be taxonomic diversity. Even though hoofed mammals and primates and carnivores are typically overrepresented, we do try and showcase a lot of different branches of the mammalian order, and we're branching out into other species too. We also have to keep an eye on geographic variation. So we want to have combatants so that we can showcase a lot of different habitats in a lot of different places in the world. And we also have to make sure that the species that we expect to go deep in the tournament have enough research to sustain story arcs through up to 6 battles. I'm sorry, 7 if you count the wild card combatants, but you shouldn't. Sorry, I'm gonna just say, don't pick a 16th seed as your champion. So up to 7 battles, but 6. Like I still live in I break out in sweats when I think about the year we had giant forest hog, and it ended up making it all the way to the championship, and there is no behavioral research on that animal anywhere in the English language scientific literature. There is nothing. There is nothing. It was so hard to write those battles. Luckily, we ended up having a really fun zoonotic disease transmission. Was it incubating Hydra or not? So we basically used that to get us through, and now I always make sure that we have enough scientific behavioral literature to support a battle. So that and we want to keep it fresh and not have the same animals year after year, because then we end up just telling the same stories. And so we will bring combatants back. Took Wolverine 5 tries before it became champion, but it will be in different divisions, and so what kind of encounters it's going to have will likely be different. Great question. All the questions are always great.
And 2 questions about recaps. So one question is, if we can't watch live, where can we find a full recap? Because the videos sometimes leave out details.
Yeah, so there's a 20-page magazine that goes out about the tournament every night of the tournament. It is at the LibGuide and it's graphically designed, it has images of all the combatants, it has a lot of information, and it basically tells the story of the battle in text form. So it's generally for learners who are readers. Um, so if teachers are teaching kids that aren't really good at reading yet, then they should watch the rundown animated recap, and then the teacher should be familiar with what's in the magazine. The magazine is really kind of like a sports page in a newspaper, where it gives like the key aspects of what happened in the encounter. Just like I actually did like a quick summary of Orca and Lioness. There were a lot more twists and turns in that battle. And so that the magazine gives kind of something in between every single tweet or skeet or whatever we're calling them over on Blue Sky, Flutter. um it's more succinct than that, but it's way more detailed than the 5 to 8 minute video, right? The animated video has to be pretty succinct, and educators really are using a lot of the videos as bell work, right? So they do a quick, like, let's watch this 10 minutes, a little bit of discussion, a little bit of emoting, and then we're going to go on to our main part of the lesson once the tournament gets going.
And are those going to be on YouTube, Katie? And
They
the
are
lib?
going to be on YouTube. The art team has created a YouTube channel that is dedicated to these videos, and Karen was actually messaging me about the videos right as I started this talk. So we are actively working on it. They're going to be amazing. We're really excited, and they're gonna have the same fun humor for classroom use, but it's going to have a little bit different of a vibe of MC Marmot. So we're very sad that MC Marmot can't be here this year, but and we couldn't pretend to try and be them, so we aren't. We're doing something a little bit different. It's gonna be really fun. The
Love it.
characters have really funny personalities.
That is fantastic. What about merch and trading cards?
Yeah, so the educator that makes the trading cards and the research cards has the animal combatant list, and he is prepping them as we speak, and they will be there on bracket drop day, pending no disasters. So we're going
And
to have a slide deck for introducing Marshmallow Madness to your learners. We're going to have both research completed and research needing to be submitted. We have all sorts of resources for whether or not you're teaching at college, high school, middle school, or elementary. We have lesson plans that are tied to these different age groups, and there's going to be everything. If people who've been playing for a long time want to jump in the deep end, like, we have all those resources that we usually do, and one more new one, and then the one that NCSE has made, and then the Arizona Department of Fish and Wildlife is making a couple for elementary school kids. So we're going to have a lot of resources. But if this is your first time doing Marshmallow Madness, we're going to have a getting started lesson plan and starter pack. Just dip your toes in. The water is fine, but you don't have to jump right into the whitewater rapids at the start.
and people are asking, how long do they need to keep this secret?
What secret?
The brackets.
So the brackets will be available to teachers on February 20th, and they go to the public on that same day. So when teachers are signing up for the materials, they're signing up for us to give them extra, like, guidance and advice and extra information. We really like it when people sign up. It's really helpful for us to have that survey information. So please keep signing up. But we had to stop doing the really early release of the bracket for educators because people were selling it on Teachers Pay Teachers. And, like, everything on Marshmallow Madness is an open educational resource. Everybody's donating their excellence and brilliance and expertise, and we make it free. It's our gift to the world. It's our gift to the community. Nobody should be making money off of any part of it. And so we release the bracket to educators at the same time, but because of that, we've actually extended that period between when the bracket releases and when the tournament starts. It used to be like 7 days, and now we're at like 16 or 17 days. So there's a lot more time for teachers to figure out what's going on and do their class prep and get their students up to speed, even if you have a block schedule where you don't see your kids every day or your students every day.
And I think the most pressing question, and I think this will be our last question, is, but will there be stoat?
Well, I mean, so stoat as a unit of measurement has existed since the 1850s. So like the Stoat stat calculator was created by narrator Mark Kissel. The first time Stoats as a unit of measurement happened in 2014 with Christy Luton. And then she's the one that found the 1850s citation where it talks about, another animal about twice the size of a stoat. So we know that stoat conversions have actually been a standard unit of measurement for over 150 years, since the time of Darwin, at least.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I know that I'm sorry if there were other questions that didn't get answered, but I know we were also going to share a little bit about a lesson. So if Blake wants to hop on and share with us that connection.
Hey, thank you. That was amazing, Katie. I've been using March Mammal Madness with my students for a long time. Not the very first year that it was done, but for a long time. And I told this to Amanda, but Tarda Gandalf is the greatest thing that I have ever seen on the internet. So thank you for that. But yes, so I'm the science education specialist here at NCSE, and we have a lesson that Katie was kind enough to work with us and share some early previews of a few of the animals that are going to be in that same different category. So just a little bit about our lessons, and I'll go through this really quickly because I want to get you all out on time. But at NCSE, we take what we call a misconception-informed approach, where we're very cognizant of the misconceptions that students are bringing into the classroom about, scientific topics like evolution and climate change. And we use mini storylines that teachers can address a performance expectation or a standard fairly quickly. So the activity that we developed about convergent evolution, the driving question is, how do we know whether organisms have similar traits because of common ancestry or because of adaptation to environmental pressures? So they're really thinking about, what is the environmental impact on the evolution of species? So that misconception that we were getting at, evolution is completely random. So in fact, it's not completely random. There are some random elements, but the environment does play a big part. So students are going to look at these two pictures here of these animals and do a little notice and wonder. So look at, what are the similarities? What are the differences? Do they already know about these? Have they seen them already? And then we're going to jump into the activity with some terrific art that was designed by one of our teacher ambassadors. Shout out to Jeff Grant. I think I saw your name in the chat. So Jeff drew all of these. And so we have a group of organisms, and the students will start out by looking at their phenotypes. What do they look like? Learn a little bit about their habitats and their diets, and they're going to try to group them. And they can group them based on how similar they look or how similar their habitat is or what their diet is. And then once they have grouped them, they're going to do they can do a gallery walk and see how other groups, put these organisms together, and then see if they want to rearrange them. Um, After they have their groupings, then we are going to give the students karyotypes of these organisms. And we're going to ask the students, can you put all of these karyotypes into just two major groups? So the students look at, lots of different things. And we did this at the Evolution Symposium with teachers, and they came up with all kinds of things. So, looking at how many chromosome pairs they have in the karyotype. Some of them even looked at banding patterns. So they tried to sort them into two different groups. And then once they have that, we give the students the key, which matches the karyotype with the phenotype card. And what they realize, spoiler, is that some of the animals that they grouped together are actually very distantly related, because some of them are placental mammals and some of them are marsupials. So then teachers ask, considering this new data, now that we know the karyotype, and a little bit more about these organisms. Would you like to change those original groups that you did at the beginning? And why are you making those changes based on this new evidence that you have? So students are going to end with kind of a CER. I used to think this, now I think this. I changed my thinking because of this. So that was a really quick overview of the lesson, but it has great art designed by our teacher ambassador, Jeff. Students get to dig into some, karyotype data. They get to think about diet and habitat and phenotype, and all of the different factors that, play a role in convergent evolution. So if you want to find that activity, it's for free on our website. All of the materials that you'll need are in Google folders. And while you're there, you can check out all of the other lessons that we have on our website. Back to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Blake. And that is absolutely fantastic. Again, all of these things are free of charge. There is nothing that NCSE charges people for to use, nor is anything going to be charged to view the videos that are going to be archived for this event on both NABT and NCSE sites. And of course, March Mammal Madness is also free of charge. So first and foremost, Katie, thank you so much for everything that you do for science communication, and for joining us to celebrate Darwin Day 2025 and tell us more about the story behind March Mammal Madness. The importance of telling stories to convey messages and share meaning of groups really hits with us personally, but also as science teachers, as we talk about telling stories through storylines to help students make sense of the things that are happening, the phenomenon. I also think that, scientifically acceptable carnage is going to be added to my lexicon. Maybe I'll keep it somewhere a little bit safer than managing to keep, if you're learning, you're winning in my mind, since I struggled earlier. But while March Mammal Madness is such a fun way to explore so many different living things and engage in friendly competitions, we really love that it conveys so much more by allowing students, teachers, and even science lovers to engage with these concepts in such incredible ways. Ways that not only build understanding, it just creates powerful formal and informal spaces for learning. It's just amazing how you weave these things together in the way that you do. And we can't wait to see what battles lie ahead and what passionate arguments will ensue all over social media as a result of this year's event. I would be remiss if I also didn't add thank you so much to you and your entire team for letting all of us at NABT and NCSE join in this year as co-sponsors with Arizona State to work with all of you. Yes. We want to see this continue to grow for many, many years to come. It's just such an incredible experience. I have to also say thank you to Jack. Oh, go ahead, Katie. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you, NCSE and NABT, but NCSE, we're so excited for what you're bringing to the tournament. We're so excited that you're celebrating it and co-sponsoring it. And it's going to be a really, really incredible year. Because we've been putting together the narratives earlier than ever, our first round battles are already incredible. They're advanced elite trait battles already in the first round. So it's going to be a really, really exciting year. It's going to be an exciting year. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for celebrating March Mammal Madness, and thank you for everything you do for science education. It's essential, and I'm perennially in debt to you and all educators for spreading love of science with early life learners. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am going to throw that out there. Before any of you start heckling the people you know at NABT and NCSE, no, we do not know what's going to happen either. So we do not have an inside track on that. So, don't even ask.
Even our own teammates don't know. The championship battle gets known by the artists that make the championship art, the geneticists that make the genetics tweet, and then the people that are writing the championship battle. Everybody else it's a surprise. It's widely a surprise. It's part of the fun, I think. A lot of our narrators actively try to not learn what's happening in the other divisions and just focus on theirs for that reason.
I love it. I love it. And, you know, super thanks also to Jackie Reeves-Pepin, the executive director at NABT. I love this ongoing partnership between NABT and NCSE working together to fight for teachers and fight for science education while supporting our teachers. You know, all of this makes Darwin Day possible, this event possible, and gets us all together to enjoy these conversations. Also have to say thank you to this incredible behind the scenes team. So, you know, they make all the magic possible. So Paul O, our comms director, Heather Grimes, who is also in communications, our specialist, of course, Blake Touchette and Wendy Johnson, who are science education specialists here at NCSE. All of our support from the leadership, the board, and the presidential panel for the National Association of Biology Teachers. Without the incredible conversation, service, and teamwork of all of these people and so many more, none of this would work as well as it does. Thank you to everyone collectively for the tremendous work done to support the accurate and robust teaching of evolution and all science. There is so much work left to be done and so many battles to fight, but together we are truly able to come together and fight those things head on. And I certainly also hope, I have to share, we hope to see all of you in St. Louis in 2025 in October, November. So if you're seeking your science community and your family, we are your people. You see the shirt, all y'all involved. I wear this all over the South just to let people know I'm the science person, come find me, right? So if you're seeking that community of educators that uplifts, fights, and fosters each other, come and join us October 30th through November 2nd in St. Louis, Missouri for that NABT Professional Development Conference. You can certainly learn more about both of our organizations online at nabt.org and ncse.ngo. For some people who have been asking, just so you know, this program was recorded and will be posted on both NABT and NCSE sites. I know that Katie, you all are going to be sharing this as well on your networks. So it's going to be out there and everywhere. It is free of charge. You do not have to pay to engage with us. So feel free to come back and watch again or share with others who were unable to attend. I want to say as we close things down for the evening, thank each and every one of you for your commitment to science education and the future of scientific literacy and critical thinking. We all hope you have a wonderful evening. We hope you've enjoyed yourself, gotten some good insights, and maybe a little bit of information, background information you can tease your colleagues with tomorrow. But thank you for making this wonderful Darwin Day a success.